All right, Andrew Easton with the ESUCC, and I'm grateful to Jen Madison of ESU4 and Samantha Pavelka of ESU16 for joining us for a conversation on some ideas to help keep students organized. We did one actually on elementary, so you can check that out because a lot of the ideas are relatively the same, but we're going to do the high school version now, or secondary, I should say. So I'm going to break that down kind of into two, three different ideas for you. Samantha, if you wouldn't mind starting us out. What's one way to maybe help our students stay organized in this remote environment?
I think the first thing to make sure that you're thinking about is your type of student. So every student is going to be very different in terms of how they truly want to stay organized. Some people deal well with checklists. Some people need more of a tactile movement. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that tactile movement. Kind of one idea that, Andrew, I know you kind of have birthed this, but of having those Kanban boards where you have 3 columns and it is a list of things to do. It is a list of things that we are doing, and it is a list of things that are finished. And so the great thing about that is students can just use sticky notes and put all their to-dos at the beginning of the day and move them across the board as they finally finish things. And a very smart colleague of mine said that having parents might be adding some chores to that list as well throughout the day, which I thought was pretty innovative as well. So just kind of a fun tactile way, and even be thinking about that middle level. Boys especially, I think this would be a great audience for that.
Yeah, that could be super helpful. That is something I've had a chance to do with my own kiddos, and so I'll just throw that up there, that I got a chance to write a little bit about how that experience went for us under my roof at one point. But it was helpful to them as elementary students, but I could certainly see at the secondary level it's having some applicability as well. Jen, any ideas from you as far as what we might consider implementing to help kiddos stay organized?
At a super basic level, I would encourage them to do things we encourage them to do in school, like if you have a planner or an agenda book, to encourage them to continue to use that tool, or even a wall calendar or something like that. But those are tools we suggest in a normal situation. They'll work for this too. They just need a little self-regulation and maybe a few reminders.
Yeah, I really like that. Kind of during the, and that's what's great about all of these, is these can work when we're in person also, right? This is just the fostering of the ability to be responsible. That is not always simple for our learners, because as Samantha said, they all tend to have their own preference for how they best like to do that. And I think there's an element of teacher clarity that's involved in this as well, is that we have to be able to communicate up front what is expected of them. And if we're doing that well, then they can start to compartmentalize that. And that's really where kind of my example for this conversation will go, is that I would get to a place in my own class where students might have 3 modules to finish by the end of the week, or 6 by the end of a 2-week span. And we would scaffold that up from maybe 2 days to a full week to 2 weeks to a quarter, even at times. And with all of that would entail in terms of a student being responsible for all that, we would just put together a weekly calendar or a unit calendar in the same way that a teacher might. And so you'd have this blank slate Monday to Friday, and they would be asked to go in and parcel out when they would do different portions of these respective modules. Now, a way to help them with that, because a module sometimes is going to have your instructional piece, which might be a 15 to 20 minute video, a practice activity, maybe there's a follow-up or a discussion that's going to also be a part of that, is that you almost have to list item out each of those different responsibilities with an approximate time frame. So I understand that each learner is going to be different and might need some flexibility. So you might say, well, the video is 15 minutes. I can tell you that, right? But some of those other pieces might be more of a 10 to 20 minute. And as students then get a sense of, okay, here's kind of this laundry list, and it'll be a little overwhelming, which is why scaffolding is important, to do this in smaller increments before you scale it up. But students can go through and then start to map out when they'll complete different tasks. And that visual helps. In addition to that, if you ask students to set a SMART goal for themselves for a particular day, and so let's say we need to be synchronous and we're going to be on for 50 minutes together, but you'd like students to work at their own pace, maybe that synchronous time becomes me checking in to ask them what their goal is for the day, what they hope to get accomplished, and then a follow-up later to see if they actually did that. And those goals can be SMART goals, where you say, hey, I intend to have this much of assignment 1 finished by the end of this 50 minutes stint of time. It's fun to have those conversations with learners where you say, I need a SMART goal, and they'll go, I'm going to read. And you go, well, good job, but how much are you going to read, friend? Because you could read 2 words and have met your goal. So we would ask them to, and some students will say things like, I'll read 80 pages. And they get to the end of class and you go, how many did you do? 30. Why? Not because they were off task, because they can't read 80 pages in 50 minutes. And as you start to learn those things over time, it's going to make you more effective and efficient at really understanding how to, like, what it's going to take to get something done. And it's a really good lesson, I think, for our secondary learners who should, at that point, start to be able to step into those spaces a little bit more effectively to take on. But we got a scaffold for it. So make sure that you start small and you can work to that piece. But I know a lot of folks are functioning in modules right now. And so think about what we can do to help students own that.
Andrew, I love so much about what you just described. But one piece that really stuck out to me was that idea of planning task completion and how long things should take, especially in a remote environment where we don't necessarily have a start and an end bell to the work. And as a teacher, I can kind of monitor and control that. If I'm a student who struggles with planning and regulation and time specificity anyway, I might need to know that answering that question shouldn't take me more than 10 minutes, or that this project is probably going to take me about 10 hours total over the course of 3 weeks, and I need to spread that out over time. So I love the thought of making that implicit idea more explicit so students know how much time a task should take.
Not only that, but I think all of our ideas have allowed students to drive their own learning, really be thoughtful and reflective about their own teaching or about their own learning process and what they need to truly succeed in life. I think that just having them and giving them some more time to reflect, I think really helps them drive their learning process. So thanks for all the ideas that were shared.
Yeah, and Samantha, I'll play off with something you said earlier too, and that the calendar that I would typically share with students for them to outline, it was funny. I had one student who came up to me once and said, can I modify this? And she flipped it, and then instead of it reading top down, it read left to right. And you just look at all those little ways in which learner preferences can, that's ownership, right? When you're modifying the tools that you need to be successful, that's when you know you're engaged and thinking about your learning, that metacognitive piece. So that said, thank you all for your time, and hopefully this has been helpful to those of you thinking about how to maybe best support your students and keep them organized during remote learning.